Pastor Anthony from Crystal River Church of God, and here we are. It's 2021. And what that means is that we have a good 21 days of prayer and fasting that we're going to be dedicating to the Lord here at CRCOG. Well, what does that mean for me, Pastor Anthony? I'm very glad you asked. What that means is you have an opportunity to dedicate and commit to 21 days of prayer and fasting to strengthen your mind, body, and your spirit. Because if 2020 taught us anything, it's that we need the Lord. And the closer we are to Him, the better off we're going to be, no matter what the year looks like. So in order to do that this year, our church has decided to produce and put out a couple of items that we're going to be using to help us strengthen spiritually, help us to strengthen emotionally, and help us to really develop a prayer life that helps us to be as close as we can to the throne of the Father. I have here in my hands a manual entitled Pray First. What we're going to be doing with this book is learning how to pray. Now you'd say, well, what do you mean learning how to pray? I've been praying since I was young. Or maybe you have no idea what it means to pray, and different things like that. We all come from different experiences and walks of life. But the important thing is that prayer matters. Prayer is key, because prayer is our direct link to God the Father. And it's our lifeline in the middle of all of these difficult times. And so this book, Pray First, is designed with very specific tips, very specific models and plans that we can follow throughout this 21 days of prayer and fasting to help us develop into prayer warriors, intercessors, and different things like this. And you might be saying, man, I know how to pray. I'm doing pretty well. I would encourage you, take a look at this book. I finished reading through this book very recently, and I learned things that I didn't even know. And it opened up my eyes to new ways of praying. It opened up my eyes to structured ways of praying, and it really helped me out. See, because when I was a young Christian starting out, I did not really understand how to pray. It was, I thought, maybe now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And there's nothing wrong with humble beginnings. Don't despise those humble beginnings. But something very important that we need to realize is that we can develop our prayer life to a point where we are on fire for God, doing what we need to do, praying what we need to pray, and really effectively reaching the throne room of God. And Pray First will be able to help you do that. So we go through this book, and it shows you the way that Jesus prayed through the Lord's Prayer. And then it goes through the tabernacle, and it shows the process through which the priests would go through as they were preparing to give a sacrifice and atone for the sins of the nation. And it goes through prayers of Scripture. Follows through Psalms and through Gospels and all these different things, and just draws out example after example of how to pray. And so I think it'd be a wonderful resource for us, because if you Google something like, how should I pray, or different things like that, it might draw in a couple of nuggets of information. But what's awesome about this resource is that a lot of that stuff is already grabbed out of Scripture and placed here in a convenient spot for you to access just like that. And it gives it right there at your fingertips. You flip open the manual and you start reading. And it begins to equip you to pray effectually so that you can reach the throne room of God. Because Jesus modeled prayer in His own life. It was much more than a now I lay me down to sleep kind of prayer. It was much more than once in the morning, once in the evening. Jesus was constantly praying. Jesus was constantly reaching out to God the Father for instruction, for guidance, for closeness, and for His presence in His life. And so here in the book is a whole page about creating a lifestyle of prayer. And it says in Mark chapter 1, verse 35, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, He left the house, and went off to a solitary place where He prayed. Prayer is most effective when it's something we do every single day. It's not something we do now and then. It's not something that we do just when it crosses our mind. But a lifestyle of prayer, when developed properly, begins to be your bedrock, your foundation for your entire Christian walk. Prayer is something that we must dedicate a certain time to. This is not something that we would flippantly just as a happenstance or as it passes by or crosses our mind. Prayer is something that we need to schedule in our day. Jesus got up in the morning and He said, this is what I'm going to do every morning. I'm going to go away to a solitary place. I'm going to dedicate my time to prayer. We need to have a certain time, and then we need to have that certain place. If we just do it wherever we want, do it wherever we can. Sometimes distractions pop up. Sometimes our phone rings. Sometimes a person walks through the room. Sometimes maybe we got a pet in the house that just wants to snuggle us. All these things can be distracting, and they can remove us from the place of purpose that we've put ourselves into for prayer. So if you can designate a certain place like Jesus did, get away from the noise, get away from the difficulty, and begin to pray, you'll see that alone begins to improve and increase your effective prayer life. And then lastly, you should have a certain plan. Because sometimes I would find that I would sit down to pray or go to my closet to pray, and I would find myself kind of rambling, wandering. I pray, the big couple of things that are going on in my life. And then I find myself trailing off and not really focusing in on what I'm praying about. When Jesus taught his disciples how to pray, he gave them a guideline. He gave them an outline for the way that we should pray with the Lord's Prayer. And when you pick up this book and you begin to read through it, you see exactly what Jesus meant with his Lord's Prayer. It doesn't mean to mindlessly recite the Lord's Prayer and then call it a day, but what it means is to take it in the structure, the viewpoint, the way that he planned it out. And so I believe that that's how we can apply the Lord's Prayer to our life in these days and these times, is we go through and we follow that plan. And that plan is here in this book. This manual, Pray First, is an excellent resource for you to be able to learn how to pray, begin to implement prayer in your life to become an effectual, fervent intercessor. I hope that right now you can access this manual in a PDF format. You'll be able to click the link, download the PDF, and you'll be able to access it immediately. Or if you'd like to wait for a physical copy already printed and put together here at the church, you can find those here in the foyer at Crystal River Church of God. I'm looking forward to starting these 21 days of prayer and fasting with you, because starting off the year right is going to be key in making it through the things that are to come. We have no idea what's coming, but we do have an idea about how big our God is, and he's bigger than whatever's coming. So join us on the 21 days of prayer and fasting and get ready for the big things that God's going to do at CRCOG. Love y'all.